Glad to be here. I'm Kyle Fryan. I am. Okay, but I work in the newly formed EJ division. For those who didn't know, EPA nationally did a reorganization several months ago. The headquarters, we wanted to be to mimic the headquarters structure. So we have a division now. Before many years ago, EPA EJ office was always under the Office of the Regional Administrator. It was sort of like a sideline thing. And full transparency, EJ has been an evolving entity at EPA. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has done EJ, I'm not going to say better, but they've been more involved with environmental justice activities than any other federal agency. And so a lot of the other federal agencies look to the EPA for guidance on how to structure EJ and how to define it and how to interact with communities with EJ concerns. Our division has a branch with 2 sections in it. I am in the environmental justice, community engagement, and grant section. And so with that, both of these sections work on grants. The time we live in now are unprecedented in terms of EPA funding around EJ issues. I think there's never been a time where this much money has been pumped through EJ initially. So as you can imagine, we are hiring staff, we are retooling the existing staff, we're pulling from other divisions to get people to manage grants. Currently, I manage over $80 million in funds. That's unheard of in EPA. I'm the profit officer for Region 4 state. I'm also the project officer for the Grant Makers program for Region 4. And I'm managing a community changing grant. So, in addition to I love the EJ grants and a collaborative problem solving grant. So it goes on and on. So just to give you a little background about who I am, my background, I've been with EPA for 17 years. 14 of those years have been in the Superfund program as a community involvement coordinator and training professionally as a business manager. I have 30 years background working with EJ communities throughout the Southeast. They found me to be more helpful to community engagement goals of the agency, and I transferred to EJ after 3 years ago. And when Daphne was on board, she was the liaison for the state of South Carolina. Right now, I'm sort of holding serve in her capacity since she retired until we have a replacement for that. I am the liaison, like Daphne was. It's North Carolina. So right now, I'm your switchboard operator for anything you need from EJ from East Coast. I don't take my switchboard operator. Basically, I'm the point of contact. You got an EJ question with the EPA that you need answered, you can reach out to me directly. I'm sharing my contact information right now. So I'm going to talk to you today about the EJ's Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Center, that we call via the grant program. Okay, I'll see it. The old fashioned. There you go. Okay. So some of the topics we're going to discuss today are the purpose and goals of the TIC-TAC program, the selection process, EPA Region 4 TIC-TACs, the one that serves our region exclusively, some other EPA funding opportunities, and additional resources. So in terms of purpose and goals, purpose of TICTEX really is to develop partnerships and establish networks and seek existing networks already in the region. And we have, because of them in the past, we've had our own listserv database of JD organization. And so TICTEX program came along. We pass a lot of that information to the TICTEX to further refine those tools and those resources so that you get a good handle on who is doing the work in each of the regions. You have the far north as the Kentucky, as far as west. That by trained certain technical assistance. In terms of how the TICTEX were selected, we had over 70 applications received, and there were 17 regional TICTEX that were chosen by headquarters. And those are 17 hubs, which has a number of spokes or supporting partnering organizations. So there's 160 spokes totally. The EJ TICTEX geographic coverage, there are 3 regions that have 1 TICTEC team, 4 regions have 2 TICTEC services, 3 TICTECs, 4 cover regions 4 and region 6. This includes 6 federally recognized tribal nations and 3 national EJ TICTECs that are also so that we have 1 national TICTEC exclusively serving tribal communities. You see that design there, that little graphic, that shows you what the hub and spokes model is like. So with our TICTECs, we have 1 TICTEC organization in the center, and it has a partnering organization in each of the region 4 states, from Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi, Kentucky, Georgia, and Florida. And they're structured differently. I'll explain that in a future slide. But how they're funded is like this. There's $177 billion nationwide allocated. Each TICTEC received $10 million incrementally over 5 years. And this is interagency and intra-agency partnership. Each TICTEC provide direct technical assistance to communities in each of their respective regions. The national TICTECs coordinate with the regional TICTECs, and they'll fill in gaps in coverage as well as have overarching training between the TICTECs in terms of how to share information. As you can imagine, and we used to now have heard that a lot yesterday, you know, you're building the plane while flying. You know, we are having learning curve challenges as an agency to just understand how best to support the TICTECs and what their needs are. And they have a lot of questions about where do we get this data? Well, can we get the data that you already generated? What initiatives are we going to standardize this information so that when people have similar questions in other regions, the information can be replicable or transferable? Here is a map showing you roughly where all the TICTEC organizations are. All of the national TICTECs are headquartered in the Washington, D.C. area, but we have all the regional ones. The one that I'm the project officer for, the Research Triangle Institute, is based at Research Triangle Park in Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina. They service all the regions 4 states that I mentioned. But the other one that services region 4 is the South Center for Environmental Justice. And they're based in New Orleans, which is technically 6, but they cover all of region 4 states plus region 6 states. States are Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, and New Mexico. So each South Center partners RTI service region 4, but in region 6, they partner with Mexico State University's TICTEC for those states. Sideline though, just to understand how this is a new thing. Region 6 doesn't really manage that grant. We manage it for them in region 4 just because we had more resources at the time and up and the funding notification them awarded. So headquarters has us managing what region 6 is grant. Another sideline note, the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice under Dr. Beverly Wright, they also have another grant that's similar to the Tic Tacs. It's funded through our Gulf of Mexico division though, and it has to deal with, doing outreach and providing technical assistance to Region 4 and Region 6 communities. But those are mostly coastal communities. So those are, they have another pot of money to do further outreach to other community-based organizations. Now about the Tic Tacs specifically. We have the two Tic Tacs that are servicing Region 4. Their main functions include helping communities in technical assistance for grant writing, as well as capacity building in a range of environmental and energy topics. The Tic Tacs is funded partially by the Department of Energy. One of the things that we're currently addressing with DOE is that, the funding that they offered to some $849,000 on these grants is very limited in scope on what they will allow communities to use the funds for. And so what we're pushing back with, we're asking them to broaden scope of here in South Carolina. We have the DOE Savannah River site, and a lot of the community sites to be the former community involvement coordinator for Savannah River site. And so I've worked with the Amani group under Rendell and Jeeks Bozeman for decades in doing environmental justice training in the rural counties around that 310 square mile facility. Yes, Department of Energy sites are huge to the county, but to do outreach, we wanted to do greater outreach, but those funds aren't available to do that. So we're asking the DOE to allow us to expand the scope of projects so people can go after to support things like emergency preparedness. One of the unique things about the DOE facility in South Carolina is that directly across the Savannah River from Plant Vogtle in Georgia. And Plant Vogtle is a privately owned nuclear power plant that just built 4 new reactors. It was the only new reactor built for a private nuclear facility in the entire country for the last 30 years. And they're proposing to do 4 reactors. So you have essentially a nuclear area defined between 2 states across the river from each other. When on South Carolina, people are concerned about what if there's an explosion at the SRIS? What's going to happen to these communities? So we brought people from the Savannah River site and their contractors to our QJ meetings and we explained to people how the protectiveness was set up at the site and what conditions they have and alert systems they have. We sought to do similarly with Plant Vogtle. It's a private site. It's not regulated by the Environmental Protection Agency, but rather by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But they don't do a lot of community outreach. So that still falls on us at EPA to be able to explain to people what conditions are in place, what precautions are in place. One thing that I've observed, and I wrote off for a RESIS grant, which is funded by our development. And we show funds from that grant to educate communities in Georgia and in South Carolina about their proximity to these nuclear facilities and just about emergency preparedness. Being a trained community involvement coordinator, I went to the large institutions in the minority communities, like church. And so we identified churches in each of those communities on the Georgia side of the river. That was in Waynesboro, Shell Bluff community. And in South Carolina, we went to Barnwell and we hosted workshops just explaining this curriculum that's already developed. That's one thing I want you all to know as community groups. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot of these things are already in place. But the way grants work is the government will pay you to take their information and massage it and make it palatable. So, you can take, we are in a transitional period in the federal government where we're in the information age, as we call it. It's prime opportunity for community-based organizations to take information that we already produce. And the federal government, we are text heavy. White pages with black text and very few clip art pictures or images or anything like that. Unfortunately, we haven't caught up with how people learn. But one thing in our endeavors in community engagement is we found that from the most affluent to the most poverty-stricken communities in our region, we found that almost everybody has one of these.
Even the babies.
Smartphone, back in the day when we were doing community engagement work before cell phones became an everyday item, we would get PowerPoints and have all these printed out handouts and stuff to take home, and people would just sit there and listen to our technical people talk, and they would be using all these polysyllabic words and methyl, depth, parts per million, parts per trillion, this and that, and people would just sit there, look all glazed over and like, wow, you must have went to school a long time to go there. And I know what it did. But now, this is the game changer, because when we go to public meeting, some gray-haired lady in the back of the room would sit there calmly and listen attentively, and she'll be typing on her little smartphone and said, "Excuse me, but you said arsenic trichloride, right?" Yes, ma'am. Well, this says here on Google that that's a carcinogen. That means it causes cancer. Do I have cancer? Is my family gonna be exposed to that causes cancer? So it's putting more pressure on our technical people that didn't have a response. So community engagement becomes a more important factor in the work that we do as an agency. And as a result of that, they have to then include us, community involvement, community engagement specialists, to come to meetings, and we create these things called community involvement plans. Now, we've always created community involvement plans, but then it was just as an afterthought. Now it's something that you have to plan for. A community involvement plan is basically a report, a living document for the agency people. When they come to a community that's impacted, they have to know who's on the ground, what they're going to run into. Who are the environmental groups operating here? Who are the activists in this community? Who do we need to be talking to? Who do we not need to be talking to? And when you visit a community and you ask the mayor, the city council people, we used to operate in good faith, thinking that they'd be honest about the situations that exist there. But then we realized that people play politics, that people have different agendas, and there's meeting after meeting. Because one thing I noticed in southern communities, it might happen in other regions, but I know that there's a southern tradition that we don't like to air our dirty laundry in front of Mrs. Compton. So we would have meetings in a community about a hazardous waste site that we're cleaning up. And then, after the meeting, somebody would pull me to the side and say, "Can you talk to me?" Well, I know the mayor didn't mention anything about this, but the community's not too happy about that dirt that they're leaving at that site. We just were afraid to say something because, once y'all leave, they might add more dirt to it, or they might dump some more things over there. And so, so that's what goes on. So, we want to find out what situations are really like, what people are actually dealing with. And so the way we get to that is by developing these plans, finding out who are all the people that represent the stakeholder population. That is, who has a voice, who doesn't have a voice, who needs to have a voice. And where do they live in proximity to what we're trying to clean up? Do they know enough about what we're proposing to do to have an opinion? And then, so that's what our goal is, to get to the root cause of who's all impacted. But I'll explain more of that in future slides. But the two TICTAC servicing our region, they have their own branding. And so the one at Research Triangle Institute is known as REACT, or EJ, which stands for Resource for Assistance and Community Training in Region 4 on Environmental Justice. That's a mouthful, so just say REACT for EJ. And their website is reactforej.org. If you go to their website, they have an intake process under Contact Us, and they will take your information. You can say who you are, who your organization is, what the nature of your concern is. And what I like about that particular TIC-TAC is they use a client relations, sort of software package called Zendesk, and it's able to silo your concerns to say they can distribute that information in different ways so they can get to you faster. They can say, is your issue a water issue, an air issue, a soil issue, or you don't know what, many communities don't know what they don't know. They don't know what to ask for. So they are able to silo your specific concerns and then be able to route them to the right subject matter expert for quicker addressing. The TIC-TAC located in the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice goes under the brand name of CIRC, which stands for Community Investment Recovery Center. And I'm going to talk about each of those models. In terms of Research Triangle Institute, their partners or their spokes are academic institutions. You have 4 predominantly white institutions and 4 that are part of you have North Carolina Central, for the state of North Carolina. Here in South Carolina, you have University of South Carolina. I know most of you know Namika. He's the point of contact for South Carolina here at the University of South Carolina. And these are the other institutions. And the way they do it is they assign you to the state representative first. But say if you're a community group that has a concern that say isn't in the wheelhouse of the University of South Carolina. Say if your issue is you're interested in vertical farming, like hydroponics and the new forms of agriculture. Well, that's something that they're doing in, I think, University of Memphis and Tennessee State. They have a partnership doing some of that. So they would refer you to them to address that specific research interest. So it's not that you're just stuck with what that particular university is good at, but they also have connections to all of these other institutions and outside of these institutions with RTI and their network, they can find someone, the subject matter expert around what you're interested in. As far as the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice, you can also reach out to them as well because we have 2 TIC-TAC servicing our region. You don't have to just deal with RTI because they're geographically closer. So you can also reach out to them, but you can't double dip if you're dealing with one agency or one RTI on one TIC-TAC, just deal with them exclusively because the Deep South Center will ask you if you're engaged with another TIC-TAC currently, and if you are, then they will be hands off because we're trying to spread the wealth, and spread the resource information. Their partnership deals with community-based organizations as well as academic institutions. So their models is a little bit different. They have subject matter expertise at universities. Many of them are in Region 6. They can still service this region. But they also work with non-governmental organizations like the Environmental Defense Fund and Healthy Goal, as well as other community-based organizations. Their process looks at, they have a 6-step process that they sort of codified as an intake process. They call it university, community university, and they meet you where you are. So basically, there are some community organizations in here that are novices. You're just getting your feet wet in environmental justice and going after grants. And there are others in here that might have had experience with some kind of grants, whether they be community foundations or what have you, or have written off for federal funding before from other agencies. So they meet you where you are, and then they determine what other resources you need to get to where you are or where you need to be. In terms of tribal organizations, we also have the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals, and they work exclusively with tribal communities. The reason why I share this information with you is because you have tribal communities in this state, and you can partner with them on environmental issues. And you can go after community change grants or grant maker grants, and that would add value to your proposal by doing something that also supports tribal communities that might be near where your communities are. Now about some of our other grants program. We have EJ Small Grants, and that really has gone away. That's become the Grant Makers Grants Program. But we have collaborative problem solving grants. I'm going to talk to you about each of these in future slides. Government to government grants, which are for states. I mentioned that to you because, even states, if they go after this funding, they need community partners. So you can go to your state agency and say, hey, do you have a community partner? Have you applied for the G grant? Because I'm the project officer for one of the G grants in North Carolina. And a community group reached out to them. They're their partner. So they wrote for a grant and got funded, and they are going to be conducting contaminated well sampling in Sampson County, North Carolina, because they asked the state to apply for those funds, and they collaborated and did it. So that's something you could think about. You can go to your state agency and ask South Carolina DES, whatever it's DES now, their new name. You can go to them and ask them to apply and make you a community partner for a project that you're interested in. I know one thing that is a growing issue in several counties in South Carolina that's dealing with the PFAS issues. The Forever Chemicals, I know a site that I was a community involvement coordinator for, which was the Gailey and Lord Superfund site in Society Hill, South Carolina, in Darlington County. It's a shocking phenomenon that that's a textile mill that went belly up and just abandoned the site. But for years while they were open, they allowed farmers from different communities all over the state to take sludge waste from their lagoons, and they used it to spread that on their own private farm. And so I would think, why would you do that? And so I don't know if they paid the people to dispose of this waste, but you usually hear about farmers taking sludge from like a feeding operation, like a hog farming operation or something like that, but not from a textile mill, because that sludge is chemical laced. There's nothing natural or organic about that. So these farmers took this sludge that was from a chemical processing operation and put that over their farmland. And so they're growing crops and things that they contaminated and compromised their drinking water. And we don't know how long or how many years they've been doing this, but now they've compromised not only their own land and drinking water, but the water they would feed to their livestock and cattle. One of these farmers had a corporate chicken farm. So now we have to investigate, fate and transport. If chickens are drinking or eating feed that's got PFAS in it, does this pass through the chickens to their bodies when these chickens get sold on the market? Then that becomes a human health issue. So these are things that you have to be, knowledgeable about, and you just never know until you start investigating, where these chemicals go. All industries create a waste stream, though. So, for those of you who live in rural communities, and agriculture is a big part of what you do, have some thought about these industries that sell sludge, because that's not fully regulated. We don't know who's minding the store in our communities with those things. So that needs to be documented, and communities need to be aware of this so that you understand, we can't buy your products because at farmers markets, because this might have that forever chemical in it. Then you're directly exposing yourself. Not to mention, these homes now have to have water purification systems developed for their homes to filter out the forever chemicals. Well, EPA had some grant funding to supply some of those houses with these water filtration systems that needed to be built on their properties, but then it only funded them for like 2 years. That means every year you change germanium, reverse osmosis, fancy water filtration systems. But the second year after that funding goes away, you, the homeowner, will be responsible for that. And it's $800 to replace those filters. And so there's only one contractor in the state of South Carolina that's supplying those filters, and that's the Culligan Water people. And if you're not in their service area, then what are you gonna do? So these things can compound and become greater problems. So I say that to you just as a cautionary tale to pay attention to the agriculture in your community and where your food comes from, and ask those questions of the service provider and who's impacting your water supply. Because they're not making new land anywhere, you know. We gotta work with the land we got and the groundwater we have, so we gotta protect it. In terms of our collaborative problem solving program, you know, those grants are based on our 7-step collaborative problem solving model, which you see here. That's what I heard yesterday. It sounds like some of you could benefit from applying for CPS grants, where you help identify the problems, gather the information, analyze the situation, generate possible options, evaluate feasibilities of ideas, reach a consensus, and develop a plan and implementation. This is like where you're getting your vision together. I just know in my heart that everybody knows the experience of the building fund at a Black church. I'm from the South, and so I know every church I've ever been a part of has had a building fund. And the way they have the building fund is they get the people of the congregation interested by having a rendering. You gotta paint them. This is what the new fellowship hall gonna look like, and this is where playground gonna go. And that's why I'm asking you to give us that silent money, that folded money, rather than the kind of jingle, so we can pay for this. And yeah, 25 years later, they still pay for building fund and build suites again. So you gotta use the same concept though to get your people on board, all your community groups, your citizens are like, why should I be interested? Well, who cares about the physical chemicals? Who cares about environmental protection? You know, community engagement and civic responsibility is a hands-on sport. You know, I hate to bring it to you, but you can't just live in a community anymore. You have to be responsible for maintaining it. You can only claim what you can maintain. And if you don't make a plan for your community, somebody will make a plan for it. So you have to be stewards over what's happening, what comes into your community. That's the difference between EJ communities and the communities that have resources. They understand that, okay, I'm sitting in on this city council meeting and I found out in their comprehensive development plan 10 years down the road that they're gonna build this largest landfill in the state down the road from where I live. Now, what comes with the landfill? Smells, truck traffic. Why did they vote to put it here? Because you weren't at the meeting and you didn't raise any protest against it. But the people who were sitting there said, oh, that's like, I'm gonna go with my community and tell them, the way to, like Harold Mitchell said yesterday, the way to stop negative influences from coming into your community is at the pre-permit stage. Before they get a permit signed by the state saying, yeah, you can dump all this wastewater in this community. Yes, you can put this sewage treatment plant over here. It's before they get that state permit, because that's the get out your free card. So they'll say, we're gonna have a minimal impact on the community, but by the time they start building, say, you know, say the dog, you know, the community's not in an uproar about this, so we're just gonna expand this another couple of acres, couple of 1,000 feet, whatever, and then the community's up in arms then. So do it at the pre-planning phase. I teach a workshop on ways to effectively protest permits and ways to write effective comments. It's not that, hey, how come you're dumping on us? There's an art and science to public commenting, and there's a way to use the language of the permit against the people who are potentially developing something. You can cite statutes. I can teach you how to do that. So that would be another workshop, I guess.
Yeah, we need that help.
But communities need to know how to fight with the tools that industry uses.
Whoop, whoop.
Because as an agency, we do not, you know, we assume that you know to fight for yourself. But if you don't, you say all this hunky-dory with us, then okay, wouldn't be my neighborhood. You've heard of NIMBY, not in my backyard. That's where it comes from. You gotta be able to advocate for yourself and use the tools they do and cite, according to the Clean Air Act, You're
Bam.
not supposed to have a facility within so many feet of a daycare center that you know use. We're a law nation, or a nation of law. So let's use that guidance and teach you where to find the information to advocate for what you need and what you don't want in your community. Here's the government grant program, like I was talking about. You can go up to $1 million for each of these. And like I said, communities could be a community partner in these grants.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
can you go back to that one, the government? Can you kind of define a little bit, what does that mean, government to government?
Yeah, government to government really means from the EPA to a state agency or a tribal, federally recognized tribe. So it's like money is coming from the EPA as a federal agency to a state agency to address a community concern.
So a community, so a town, we have a town, that would be considered EPA to Easto.
That's
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make.
Now, some of these funds though, will only like go to a county or a state level government. But there may be some that there are like, here's something you might not know about, but it's true. With some of our water grants, many of them are presented as loans, as revolving loans. And so many rural communities that have limited tax bases, they're afraid to apply for them. But the secret is, once you apply for them, they become a grant. But they are presented as a revolving loan fund so that you'll have to pay it back. And the way, this is one of these older grants that traditionally it was hidden as a loan because for whatever the powers that be wanted communities that had affluence to be able to apply for these resources. But if you were a poor community, that man, we have money to pay for a new water treatment center or a new infrastructure. Everybody's infrastructure is strong. So you can apply for these funds, and then after you get them, they will say, we're going to turn this into a grant because the need is so great. So apply anyway. And if they try to make you pay for it, you might end up paying 1 or 2 years and say after 5 years, this becomes a write-off. But it's a 20-year grant or something like that to replace crumbling infrastructure. Many of these rural communities, people are now moving back into the small towns where they came from, but they don't have the infrastructure or the capacity for going from a town of 4,000 people to 10,000 people. So now with this infrastructure, we can expand infrastructure now. We get this revolving loan fund, and as we expand the tax base, and we turn that this is a write-off now for our community, and now we got the infrastructure to build 1,000 more houses, to increase our tax base, to go after other funding. This is how you grow a city. This is how organizations like you get around the table and say, we don't go after this. I don't believe in going to one agency for funding. I teach communities how to make a funding pie. Where you look at EPAs in town cleaning up a Superfund site, use that as leverage to go after other funding that complements the Superfund site. I've seen it in these rural South Carolina towns, there's plenty old factories, textile mills that got that tax abatement for 5 years, and they shut down the doors, and you got a big footprint of an empty facility. You can turn those into incubators. There's popular funding sources to create business incubators. What's an incubator? You take a big empty building and compartmentalize it into 10 smaller cubicles of buildings and say, okay, I can't bring another textile live in this place, but I can turn this into an incubator, and I can have an insurance salesman office, and I can have a community conference room that everybody shares, and I can have a customized incubator. There are kitchen incubators that are possible. What's that? Well, you got somebody in your town who makes the best pecan logs, and somebody else who makes pies, and somebody else who caters weddings, and somebody else who needs an industrial kitchen for supporting other things. You have that set up for people who are in that niche industry. And because you can then tap into USDA funds for rural development and get fiber optics sent into your community, you can live locally and work globally. Now, save your pecan logs.
Sign me up.
Not the teacher are putting $100 together. Who has the money to do what? And then you find out what are the interests and because
Low
people are
foundation.
so interested, they find out there's a way to do things. But people are also, as we are living in a time when people are dealing with the concepts of gentrification, where people are leaving the suburbs and re-inhabiting our urban centers because they're tired of 2-hour commutes and they're tired of paying $4 a gallon for gas and things like that. But on the flip side of that, there's equally a lot of people leaving the urban centers and moving back to the country. Okay. Because now you've got internet and bandwidth in the country, so it's not like you're isolated anymore. You can be isolated population wise, but have access to all the amenities that the city has. So this is advantageous because the tax base is cheaper in the rural communities.
Whoop, whoop.
Richland could be a hub
Whoop, whoop.
for the major urban centers that are closest to it. And it'd be the best kept secret in that general area. You know, it's like being a big city without having all the problems of a big city.
Back to that part.
Think outside the
Back to
box. Yeah.
that part. Oh, I'm sorry.
The South Carolina Department of Environmental Service has the government grant. They were awarded last year. And the town of Eastover is one of the community partners. So this grant is available.
Okay, so do you know what that project is for? I mean, what
Yeah.
specifically funded?
The EJ Strong program that DES has. So we're going to continue doing our workshops, working with different teams. Rosemont, Lord Richland have been working with us with the first installment. So we're going to continue to work with them, but also extend to other people.
And the specific funding for Lower Richland is for youth. She said that the former DHEC has the government to government grant now. They were successful in in receiving funding, $1 million for the government to government, and the Lower Richland community and Rosemont community, not Rosemont. Okay, well, in Marlboro County and Lower Richland are already a part of that government to government funding. And for Lower Richland specifically, they are allocating, I think it's about $96,000 for youth programming, for youth workforce development programming. So we are recipients in a roundabout way through DHEC.
Is Marlboro County close to Richland County?
2 hours. Right. Hour and a half.
One of the 3 counties with that PFAS issue, Farmers and Marlboro, Chesterfield, and Darlington County. And counties. So, okay. All right, well, continuing on, with the grant makers and sub-grants, the eligible applicants are nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, community-based organizations, private, local government, institutions of higher education. And, so all of those are part of in your community already. Yes.
I have a question that I was asked later, but it sounds like it's fiction. How can an LLC take advantage?
Contractual.
Hold on just a sec, hold on.
Contractual. Yes, you can. Contractual.
I want to know how can an LLC take advantage of some of the grant community for offering for nonprofits.
All right,
If it's a family, and it's, the land has been designated, since 1911. So it's like a store, we're trying to work on having it classified as like storable areas as well.
They get in their head.
Is there a way that
You need to say the questions.
some of the great opportunities, nonprofit?
unfortunately, no, for-profit entities like LLDs and corporations cannot apply for grant funding unless they are somehow aligned with other nonprofit groups. You understand how grants work. They're charitable organizations.
Yes.
So if it's a privately owned entity, then you can't use like taxpayer dollars to benefit like your family's interest. Unless you're like donating the land like to be a land trust or a public space, like a park or something like that. And then you can go after grant money that will then make improvements on it for a charitable purpose. But that's the only way like a private entity can benefit from a grant.
Just a clarifying question then, would there be a path forward if the LLC were say part of a team that had a nonprofit organization as.
That's two different things.
Yeah, that's one way to
Like
do
a
it.
foundation.
Those are two different things.
In my grant writing, because I'm a certified grant writing instructor, I teach that to nonprofit.
Yeah,
But, so that's something we can look at in the future too.
Got you.
you should always have a second.
But, I encourage people who have an LLC or a incorporated for-profit entity to have a nonprofit arm. And the reason why I do that is because, you know, I mean, it's smart money. And there's a way to do it too. I mean, if you have a for-profit company, like you own a sandwich shop, deli in your community, but you know, I own a for-profit business, but I also encourage people to have a nonprofit because, you know, I said, use your day job to pay for your place job. My day job is because I community engagement person, but my
All day
day
long.
job is what I'm passionate about, which is EJ and teaching grant writing to community groups. So use your for-profit business. I mean, the first grant I ever wrote was an entity, the Environmental Support Center, that does not give money, but it gives equipment and training. So for the Woeful Citizens Response Group, when I was a founding member of that environmental justice organization, I noticed that I was the only person who knew how to use a computer. There were elderly people in the part of this community who I was a college student, but we didn't have any resources. We didn't have any tools to do our PowerPoints and things. So I wrote a $20,000 grant to get a laptop, a copier, a fax machine, a projector screen, software, and GIS training to teach me how to use GIS mapping to do the first GIS maps for $4,200 to explain the community's perspective. Because we needed to fight with the same tools that the polluting industry had, because that looks impressive to agencies. Oh, they got GIS maps there. You know, this must be right. Plus, they believe the boundaries, the contamination needed at the fence line, but I showed where all the communities were impacted way beyond the fence line. Well, who you gonna believe that? We both have GIS maps, and I'm a scientist. They were scientists. So now the agency said, well, you sound more credible to me now. So that's how that works. But you don't always have to get money, but you can get resources. So with those tools I got, we realized that, you know, after the grant is over, that organization didn't want those tools back. That's yours. That's yours to use for business. A computer could be, a copy machine could be used for business. So that's how you build up your organizational capacity. And so we were able to publish our own newsletters and all those things, using copy machines and things like that, fax machines, to keep in touch with other organizations. So we had a greater capacity rather than sitting around somebody's coffee table. Well, what we gonna do? Well, how we gonna do this? Well,
That's right.
I gotta wait to pay them before we keep sending out these flyers. You know, that's real. So I'm just telling you, there's a way to skin the cat. All right, as part of our community change grants. Advocates for this are community-based nonprofit organizations, tribes, local government institutions of higher education. These are the largest grants that we offer. Track one are estimated 150 of these grants going out for $10 to $20 million each. We've already funded 5 here in our region. We're gonna have about 20 of them total until the money runs out. I am the project officer for one of the grants in North Carolina. They just got like $18.5 million to do a revitalization of parks green space in High Point, North Carolina. But these are collaborations between community-based organizations and city governments or academic institutions. So you can say, we want to partner with.
The town of Easto.
Whoop, whoop,
County.
town of Easto, yeah. Bye
You
now.
got your partner, think about a university or something like that that's in the area, say, I'm just saying hypothetically, you can say, you want to meet with the University of South Carolina or one of the HBCUs, Allen or Benedict.
Voorhees.
Or Voorhees.
That's right.
And establish a Center for Environmental Justice Excellence in your county to talk about.
Environmental
legacy of
excellence.
Revitalization and environmental justice issues, what have you. These are just ideas. These are big picture ideas, like when you want to collaborate between two counties, like say you have townships that exist between counties, or you're annexing parts of the city and you want to expand the infrastructure, but you need different municipal governments to sign off on it, like from the different townships, because that's going to expand the opportunities for business development if you have more infrastructure for the future. Or say a solar farm that's going to power, you want to be the first solar power city in or town in South Carolina. You know, think about the future, about what's trending in the future. And that was the community change grants are all about. This shows additional resources. If I want you to pull out your smartphones and scan this QR code, this will take you to a flow page that I created. This is the technology that I use at the region. A flow page is basically a QR code that links to several other links. So instead of having 100 different links, if you got to scan the QR code for each, you have one on your phone. And when you scan it and open it, it'll take you to a page. You click on any of those links, and they'll have links to each of those Tic Tacs that I told you about in this presentation. They'll have links to the community change grant. I make these also, so I can customize these for your community, just like I did for the community of Gloucester, Mississippi. You can have create a theme around, you know, like you got LR Speaks, you can have an LR Speaks flow page, and then have all these links to resources for your community. So when they scan this, you have a walk-in repository. You can pull up this QR code and scan this for your neighbors and say, you got a walk-in library of resources so that each of your groups can apply for funding. You know where the links are, you know what they're all about, and then you can find the calendar of what's coming out. That's a community change grant. Some of these grants are rolling on a rolling basis like Grant Maker. It's not even out yet. But when it comes out in October, it's gonna keep coming until the funds go out. So I encourage each of you to apply for these funds. It's like that OJ song, you know, about please don't miss this train at the station, because if you miss it, I feel sorry for you. Because this train ain't coming back. This train gonna keep on. So you gotta get on, oh yeah, that one too. But you gotta get on this train. There's money out there in an unprecedented amount. So almost no idea, almost any idea can be turned into an environmental justice project. You know, when I teach that in my training, I teach that, you know, there's ways to look at everything from an environmental justice arm. I work with universities that, you know, we thought when EJ grants came out that we send them to the biology department, the chemistry department, so all these HBCU campuses or whatever. But I was the grants administrator at an HBCU. So I had to teach other programs to see themselves in other grants. So the environmental justice program was open to the journalism department and mass communication. How? What are you talking about? I said, digital storytelling. What is that? I said, well, this was the time before the smartphones when people had digital cameras. So I taught the journalism department at Mass Comm. I said, get your students to write stories about environmental justice and take pictures of these abandoned sites and document stories from the citizens that live in these communities, and then have an art showing of these things, you know, and then tell the stories about these people who are the voiceless masses in this community. And you got a grant to be able to do that. And you also can get supplemental funding from the National Endowment of the Arts to say, we did an art project on environmental issues in this EJ community. And now we have art showing, an annual art show, and then you pay elementary, middle school students to have a shirt designing contest for the theme around, you know, lower Richmond. You could say, create a concept, a logo for us, have an art show, and then have a display of that. And that's a grant. So you got now multi-generational learning, talking about an issue that you're passionate about. Anything that is successful or sustainable, like a pattern that is already found in nature. So I believe in having been a former educator, you educate seeds, children about these things at a level that they can comprehend. And you get them by painting pictures and drawing pictures and doing logos and making shirts and things like that on Lower Richland Speaks. All of a sudden now you've got everybody understanding what this is. It's something you want to pass down to generations, not just wait till they're grown and, oh, we got to deal with this. What's this all about? This is how you build a sustainable program. And
so I know, Brad, I know
Well, go ahead. No,
Well,
try something.
I'm just,
Johnson.
I know that we're running out of time. But what I want to suggest is I want to suggest that we have an opportunity to schedule a chance for Kyle to come back, and we will fund that. Specific discussion around these opportunities and make it a broader discussion for many others in the community to actually be a chance to take part in as well. And so I want that to be on the table for you, Mr. Bryan, for us to then figure out how we might be able to better utilize your resources. So, and I know that that's something that you and I talked about, but it's something that I want to make sure we make definitive after this discussion, because I think it's something that a lot of us are very interested in.
That's exactly what I wanted to flag is I'm seeing the need and the appetite for like a strategic.
Yes.
Okay,
So
so
I'm pretty much done. This does last slide has information resources. Like I said, the main one I want to leave with you is my email address, which is Bryant, Bryant. It's not on the screen, so I'm telling it to you. Bryant, Kyle, Bryant, Kyle